Hello there folks, welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style self-development and personal grooming. Now today is a serious subject to talk about. This is not the fripperies of men's style and all of the other things which I often make the focus of my conversations. Today it is about male loneliness and how to deal with it. And I'm going to give you some tips that I have used personally to help me overcome loneliness at various periods of my life. But like I say, it's a serious topic, and I know it is because I frequently get emails or direct messages from gentlemen who watch the channel who will write to me and ask for my views on encountering loneliness in life and how to overcome it. And over time, I'm 54, I've been on a journey, and that journey has brought me into contact with loneliness and isolation many times. It's a complex emotion, and it can affect people of any gender, of any age, or at any stage of life. Even if to the outside world, you're living a perfect life, a successful career, a happy family, you may be feeling the profound effects of loneliness over and above those aspects of your life which appear to be in perfect harmony. So loneliness, it's an interesting thing. And it's an issue which is often considered to be something which men are not affected by. And I think that's because women are more prone to discuss their emotional well-being than men. Men, I think, from a very early age are sort of imprinted upon us that we are independent, we are robust, we are tough and able to withstand the storms of life. And that misconception actually makes it very difficult for many men to accept when they are facing loneliness themselves, and certainly even if they are able to identify that it's loneliness which is affecting their life journey, they are reluctant to reach out to others for help, to talk about it, even ignoring it themselves. And of course, we know that if you do that, if you don't face a problem head on, more often than not, it will get worse. So today I'm just going to talk about understanding male loneliness, the statistics which actually make very disconcerting reading to show that we are on a trend into a world where male loneliness is very common. And I think if we can understand that and accept it, and even by me telling you that I feel lonely from time to time, if you're in that position, it might help you taking the next steps. And I've got some tips here. I've written some tips down. Some have been drawn from my own experiences, things that I've tried and they work, and others recommendations more generally about dealing with loneliness. But actually, I think, first of all, we need to understand this impact of male loneliness. And as I said, we are socialized from a very early age that us chaps, well, we're the tough folks. We're the men. We don't suffer mental well-being problems in general, let alone breaking it down into smaller subgenres like loneliness and isolation, which in essence seems like quite a basic and simple thing to deal with. It's not a physical problem. We can understand perhaps when people say, I need to have a new knee, or I have a hip injury, or something of that nature, or even much worse ailments. We're happy to talk about things like that. But because loneliness falls into the category of mental and emotional well-being, we don't like talking about it. And we certainly don't like asking for help. The old joke is often retold, mostly by women, that a man driving a car will drive around lost for hours on end, rather than stopping to ask somebody, can you give me directions? Because we just don't like that feeling of handing over control to somebody else. We are taught from an early age that we are, the masters of our destiny and we should be in control of it. And those deep-rooted thoughts really stop us reaching out for help when sometimes help is all that is necessary. So basically, as chaps, we have this continual pressure to appear to be in control of our lives and in charge of everything. And then that gives us a huge challenge, really, when we are then expected to display vulnerability. And this is actually exasperated by the societal expectations that many men are labouring under. You know, we have a strong expectation to be the breadwinner. Even though the world is changing, there are still quite a lot of us who are overshadowed by, you know, the societal expectations of the past. So if you're the breadwinner, you have to continually think about career advancement, development, earning more money, wealth acquisition, because you've got to put the food on the table, to pay for the bills, to pay for the nice cars and the holidays. And it doesn't give us much time sometimes to invest in and even reflect upon our personal relationships, and they can be lost. And the statistics are unequivocal when it comes to the impact of loneliness on men. In fact, and when I looked at the numbers, and I have them here, they're actually rather chilling. And I will refer to the numbers because they do show that men are lonelier right now than at any other period in human development. Now, I don't mean to frighten you or disconcert you by talking about these numbers, but if you're feeling lonely and isolated, actually the first step on that journey to accepting it is to understand that you're not alone. There are other people, many people, in fact, the majority of people who may be feeling exactly the same as you. For instance, now the studies which I refer to here, which I will post the links to in the show notes below, all come from quality academic surveys and studies into this topic that we're talking about today. And they're referenced below should you wish to learn more. But particularly in the United States of America, where we have quite a lot of reference material, 27% of men today only have 6 close friends as they go through life. So just over a quarter of men have 6 close friends in life right now. Now, many of you will be sitting there thinking, well, that's me. I don't have 6 close friends. I mean, that sounds quite a high number. It's half the number that it was 30 years ago. So 30 years ago, nearly 60% of men would have had 6 or more close friends. Today, it's only 27%. So you can see it's a deeply impactful situation. 15% of men will tell us that they have no close friends at all. No close friends. 0. Nil. They feel alone, friendless, and on the journey on their own. Only 15% of men, or 15% say they have no close friends at all. And that number is up 500% since 1990. So in only 35 years or so, 500% more men feel that they have no friends or more in life. Now, of course, feeling lonely and isolated, there are going to be consequences. And I'm going to talk briefly about the consequences, but don't worry, coming up I do have the tips which I'm going to offer you for reducing the sense of loneliness and isolation in your life. Now, one of the biggest consequences of feeling lonely is depression. Isolation causes feelings of worthlessness and hopelessness, and in time that can spiral into clinical depression if it's untreated, if it's not dealt with or faced by the person in that situation. And it's an unfortunate scenario, really, that men, more than women, who are suffering with depression, one of the inherent consequences of depression itself, for men, is to withdraw more deeply into themselves, to withdraw away from society, which is actually where the resolution to the problem sits, of course. Because when you move away from society and become more withdrawn, you know, the positive outcome which we are seeking from loneliness is further away. Anxiety is also another consequence of these feelings of loneliness. Chronic loneliness leads to anxiety, fearful thoughts that you might have, that you're lonely now, but then you have the anxious feeling, am I going to be lonely forever? Is this all that lies ahead for me? And you start to get into that anxious mindset. You're fearful about the future. And that leads you to make perhaps not the best decisions about the present if you're constantly worrying about the future. And men, of course, who are anxious and in a situation like this, they find it even more difficult to reach out for help if you have an anxious mindset. So it becomes even harder to find, the escape to the feelings that you have. And in some very severe cases, persistent loneliness can cause men to having the worst thoughts of all, to think about ending it because they are fearful that there's nothing positive lying in the future. And they see ending it as the escape to the emotional harm that they feel that they're in through being chronically lonely and isolated. And through my work in the charity sector, I know that, if you carry loneliness into later life, you are twice as likely to suffer with debilitating illnesses like dementia, for instance, Alzheimer's disease. Twice as likely to be impacted by it if loneliness is part of your life. And I mean, a widely spoken statistic is that if you are lonely in later life, it shortens your lifespan to the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes per day for the duration of your life. That's how powerful the effects of loneliness can have on your longevity and your enjoyment of life. But I'm not giving you bad news here. I'm bringing you a solution or some ideas that can help you draw you away from a life of loneliness, isolation, depression, anxiety, and the worst possible thoughts. Now, I bring you these observations, these tips, not just through academic study and even working in the well-being sector for a number of years now, where I actually deliver seminars on these subjects. I actually bring you some of these through lived experience. Because I've been lonely in my life, of course I have. I've lived, to a degree, a very nomadic lifestyle. From a very young age, I joined the military. I moved away from home. I found myself in an environment full of strangers while still a kid. I was merely 17, legally a child. I found myself feeling crushing feelings of homesickness and loneliness. I had to build a new life for myself. Every 2 or 3 years while you're serving in the military, you'll be posted to a new location. A couple of times I was posted outside of my own country. And I had to start again, meeting new people, building new connections. Again, crippling feelings of loneliness every time that happens. When I left the military, still only in my mid-20s, I embarked on a career in law enforcement. That involved moving regularly, starting in new backgrounds. When I got married, I moved countries to join my wife. Not far, I was living in Wales and my wife was living in England, but still, I moved from one environment in which I was very comfortable, the town in which I was born and brought up, to a town which was alien to me. I started building new friendship groups, new connections. And these are some of the ways how I did it. And you can perhaps consider how to employ these in your life to perhaps take you from a lonely mindset to a reaching out and building new connections mindset. Now, the first step for me in overcoming loneliness is the acknowledgement that you are feeling lonely, that you get that sense that you are lonely. And you need to recognize that it is okay and entirely normal to feel lonely from time to time. It is a perfectly natural part of the life journey for any man who's lived any of these circumstances to feel lonely and isolated and very much alone in your world. Ignoring that is normal is actually the worst thing you can do. You need to accept this is part of life. Loneliness is just one of those things, in the same way that you might have a bad knee or you might need to have an operation on an elbow injury. Loneliness is something, just acknowledge it, accept it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not dirty, it's not profane. There's nothing to be ashamed about. It's part of life. The first step to overcoming loneliness is to reach out and connect with others. It's crucial in the return to normality from a loneliness mindset. Now, it might involve spending time with family, friends, tracking down old friends. Even if you've moved to a new town, our world has never been smaller than it is right now because of the digital connectivity even transport connectivity, if you live in a Western world country in which we can easily move around readily and join and meet up with friends. So reaching out, go on Facebook, see where those old school friends are and reach out to them. And, even if it means you have to be the person who makes the first step, who arranges, a reunion of your old buddies from work, from school, from the sports club, be the prime mover in your journey back to away from loneliness. That's the way to look at it. And look around in your community. See what there is that you can get involved with. I've talked about this with my patrons, and I recently discovered there's a thing in my area called Talk Club, which is specifically for men, to bring like-minded men together to have conversations about challenging aspects of their lives. I've been to Talk Club. I've enjoyed it enormously. But there will be things, if you live in the UK, find out where your nearest Talk Club is. That's a good start. But if you don't, find out what equivalents there are wherever you may live in the world. Because I assure you, there are groups of people, even if it's not a support group like Talk Club, it could be things like the Rotary Club, sports groups, things like that. Find out what's going on, use the internet, look in the local paper, see what is meeting in your area, and take the first step. It'll be tentative, of course it will. You might not like half the things that you go to, but you don't know until you give it a try. So give it a try. It's bloody hard work to make the first step, particularly when you're feeling a little isolated and lonely and vulnerable. But believe me, it's the first step back on the journey to normality. The next thing you can do is a bit quite linked to that, and that is to cultivate some hobbies in your life. Because engaging in activities that you enjoy will help you get more enjoyment from life, and it will undoubtedly bring you into contact with other people who are like-minded, who are on the same path as you. Whether that's local history, archaeology, playing sports, going to a group where people like model aeroplanes or model trains, a local book club. There are 101 things which happen in any community, be it a small community or a big community. There'll be something going on. And if you're unfortunate enough to live in an area where there isn't something like that, find out, or think about what you are passionate about and set one up. Be the person who sets up the model aeroplane club in your small village or community, or man's talk club, whatever you want to call it. But by cultivating hobbies, you will naturally bring yourself into contact with people who share the same interests, who like being amongst people who also share the same interests. And there is a ready-made cohort of people that will help you overcome loneliness. People to talk to, make connections with, go to social groups with. It's the beginning. Small steps lead to long, journeys in life. That's the way to think of it. Another way to overcome loneliness is volunteering. Now, I discovered this was a real path away from loneliness for me many years ago. I joined a military veterans support charity as a caseworker. It's called SAFA, Soldiers, Sailors, Airmen's Families Association, here in the UK. And it is an organisation which provides practical frontline support to veterans in need. And I became a caseworker. So I went away, did a training course, went through all the vetting. And for 15 years now, I have been a caseworker with that charity. I've helped hundreds of beneficiaries overcome significant issues in their lives. You might think that's commendable, but actually, to a degree, I didn't do it for them. I did it for me, because being part of that charity, that body of like-minded people striving towards a common purpose, it actually helped me in more ways than sometimes I helped the beneficiaries. I made friends. I made people I was working alongside with as a volunteer. We have a Christmas party. We have monthly meetings. I interact with these people who are now my friends, who I help and they help me as we go through our journey helping others. Never overlook the power of volunteering to improve your life in a myriad of different ways. Just think of it. In your area, what groups exist which help others? If you join that group, immediately you will be surrounded with people like you, who are also volunteers, intent on helping other people. So think of volunteering as a definite step on helping yourself escape from those feelings of loneliness. Now, there may come a point in your journey where you think, whatever I do, none of these things work for me. Whatever I do seems to, not lead me away from this sense of nagging loneliness and isolation, which is weighing me down. If you hit that point where the steps that I've suggested are unhelpful or not impacting you, and the feelings of loneliness are significantly negatively affecting your life, there is another step you can take, and that is to reach out to somebody for professional help. There'll be therapists, there will be people in your community or nearby, certainly somewhere, who you can go to, who can help rebuild you in the direction that you wish to be going in, towards being happy and contented and not feeling lonely and isolated. Reach out, ask for that support, and you'll be amazed. I mean, I've never got to that point yet because fortunately for me, the earlier steps which I've suggested were all I needed. But believe me, if I came to a point where I really felt my life was being blighted by feelings of loneliness and isolation, I wouldn't hesitate. It's an investment in me. And let's be honest, who else is going to do it? If you can't look after yourself, who else is going to do it? And that leads me quite nicely into my final step, which is really to practice self-care above all else in your life journey. You have to put yourself at the center of your universe. Because even if you are in that role, you are the breadwinner, the leader of your family group, and you feel that you can't express your feelings of loneliness because you don't want to be seen to be weak. You don't want to be seen to be vulnerable. You don't know who to ask, because if you do express your dissatisfaction in life, it will impact other people. Those who love you, they might feel that, perhaps they should help you more. And you don't want to do that to them. Remember, you can't help anybody unless you help yourself first. You have to be the center of your universe. So put the onus on you to look after yourself. Don't worry about other people. Make sure at the very least you're getting enough sleep, you're eating properly, and you're taking exercise. So whatever happens, you're in a good physical and mental place. And then start working on some of these other areas in which you can draw yourself away from feeling loneliness. And always remember, loneliness is a temporary state. It often comes and goes naturally as we go through different phases of our lives. So even though you might feel lonely right now, by taking proactive steps, as we've talked about today, and more than anything, just understand that loneliness is normal. You are on the way back to drawing away from feelings of loneliness and isolation. You can build stronger connections when you put your mind to it, and you can overcome it. And remember, even if it comes to the stage where you need to seek help, asking for help is strength. It is not a weakness to help others. It is a demonstration that you have identified an issue and you're prepared to face it head on and to deal with it. So it's not weakness, my friend. It is absolutely strength. And if you are struggling with loneliness today, if you are impacted by these feelings, you're not alone. We're all there at some point or another. But take the step. Reach out today to somebody who can help you. Be it a friend, a relative. You don't have to tell them you're feeling lonely. Just ring them up and say, how do you fancy catching up for a drink or a coffee? And we can have a chat and find out how we're getting on in life. That's all you need to do. It's the first step. But I've given you some others as well, if they will be of some help to you. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this somewhat philosophical conversation today. If you have, please like the video, subscribe for more, send me a comment, send me a question, drop it into the comments or drop me an email. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee, a quick one-off thing, or you can become a patron. My patrons benefit from extra videos that I make for them and them alone each and every week. And I've got a personal dialogue with many of those guys because they're my extended family. And you will find the links to all of that in the show notes below, as well as links to the research which I've talked about today in this video. So until the next time, do something today to make your life a little better, and I will see you again very soon.